Hello, this is World University and Schools live Hangout on air on July 1st, 2019. And I'm Scott McLeod, and if you want to see the updated website, go to worlduniversityandschool.org for studying online, for licensing and accrediting free-to-students degrees, licensing on MIT OpenCourseWare in its 5 languages, planning universities in 200 countries' official languages, and wiki schools in 7,111 living languages. And as I said, free to students degrees. We're seeking to offer bachelor, PhD, law, medicine, and IB high school, again, if we can, in 200 countries' official and main languages. So I think one other person has let me know that they would be joining the Hangout today. And another possible participant who is the Chief Science Officer for the HUM headband, HUMM, could possibly join us as well. He is developing a headband that potentially currently stimulates memory through delivering a very small electrical impulse, I think, through the headband. But the headband could be used in many, many other ways for brain research as I think about it. And potentially even with this HUM headband as an example, brainstorming wise, could be used to develop it with sensors in it and even lasers to begin to map the folds and the contours of the brain, and also conceptually develop this brainwave, this headband, potentially with Wi-Fi transmitters to transmit the data that these sensors and lasers might gather into a realistic virtual Earth with realistic virtual avatar bots of individuals and species, and thus provide a new way of beginning to potentially map the brain. These neural hats, hoods with 128 sensors or more on it might be another approach in an interesting way that would complement the HUM headband. The HUM headband is particularly interesting for my anthropological and ethnographic research on Harbin hot springs because it could be used while soaking in a warm pool or also in one's own bathtub. I'm glad to see Fritz has joined us today again. Fritz just typed, "Hi, Scott, thanks. I managed to join again, but still am having problems with audio." Thanks for joining, Fritz. And please post your ideas and your questions in text chat. Share some of your thinking about World University and School or related questions. Or if you have further questions, let's develop a conversation in those regards. Last Monday, we talked a little bit about the 3 pedagogical methods, learning approaches that World University and School wants to take with matriculating students. And one would be the conference method. So in 10-person Google group video Hangouts, such as these, but Google Hangouts is going away August 1st, 2019. So the idea of conferencing or seminar or a conversation around a table, which has a long history in universities, might well find form in Zoom video conferencing or Skype video conferencing, or another approach within Google. I don't know what's happening to Google Hangouts, but it would be great if Google could adapt it for real-time music making, perhaps using specific protocols, and even hypothetically something like telerobotic surgery that would require real-time, as well as probably much faster, reliable speed. And it seems like Google has the potential to, take Hangouts in a new way or similar. So our first World University and Schools first method is conference method, seminar, or conversation around a table, kind of Socratic method with an instructor. World University and School would like to hire graduate student instructors learning to become faculty, potentially from greatest universities such as Stanford and MIT, conceptually to teach to the MIT OpenCourseWare faculty in video. So these graduate students would teach sections as they learn to become faculty, with a sort of approach to seminar. And this would involve also potentially a focus on questions of how to make a conference method or seminar even inspiring. So how will World University and School come to potentially train graduate students to teach using the conference method, a kind of approach that I have in mind from Reed College. So that's our first method of teaching at World University and School, live, interactive, with teachers, conference method, in group video, conceptually, eventually, potentially into a realistic virtual earth. Second would be sort of threads conversation that would be asynchronous. So students could be in different time zones and log into the class at different times. There would be a video component. The faculty member would teach through video also, but the conversation would be among and between the students in particular threads around focused and fascinating and interesting and serious questions relating to the course. And this asynchronous threads aspect would allow a conversation to develop and unfold apart, without a teacher, potentially in the threads, in the conversation, necessarily. And also when students could participate in the conversation according to their other full schedules. And the third approach is independent study, where students conceptually would take an individual MIT OpenCourseWare course, watch the videos if there are any, read the materials, do the final exam questions and the other related processes, and potentially a graduate student would offer some sort of assessment in this whole process. So first method, conference method. Second method, I'll call it a threads conversation, which is asynchronous, per Charlie Nesson, Harvard Law Emeritus Professors, Jury X, edX, Harvard X course. Third method, independent study. Great that another announcement that World University and School has recently joined Handshake, which will enable us, when World University and School gets monies, to hire students who are looking for internships or externships. And this handshake platform allowed us, as we signed up, as World University and Schools signed up onto Handshake, to affiliate with greatest universities, including Stanford and MIT and Yale and Princeton and Brown and Dartmouth and Cornell and University of Chicago and Reed College and many others. So hopefully World University and School will be able to offer our internship positions and potentially hire students something like 10 hours a week from these great universities, which is an amazing opportunity because these students are high achievers. They're in many ways the best and the brightest, and potentially we'll be able to do this in each of all 200 countries, official and main languages, thereby creating educational opportunity with free to students degrees, with student interns and student externs helping to facilitate and build World University and School as they earn a little money, as potentially they go through their educational process at some of these other great universities, and potentially also eventually as they matriculate and study at World University and School. So Fritz wrote, the description of the electronic hood sounds highly futuristic, but it's great that the hood is not highly intrusive. Yeah, I think, what happens in cyberspace, in these emergent digital spaces, I think that's what you mean by hood. As video conferencing becomes more and more fully available, accessible, easy to use, and also as realistic virtual Earth and virtual worlds grow and develop as well, makes them a little bit unobtrusive. They, keep growing and developing each on their own. So perhaps if that's what you mean, if a neighborhood or hood is cyberspace, and if that's what you mean by Fritz, yes, cyberspace is highly futuristic, but also not cyberspace. Each URL, the URL for Google Hangouts, the URL for Zoom video conferencing, the URL for Skype video conferencing, are quite unobtrusive. If you mean by hood also neighborhood, other universities like Stanford, yeah, I think Stanford is highly futuristic also. They have a close relationship with Google, and being in the heart of Silicon Valley, and also with their computer science department having informed probably many companies in Silicon Valley, there's a fascinating, highly futuristic aspect to Stanford and to Silicon Valley, all of the big neighborhood of Silicon Valley, which we're part of. So those were some of the news updates, potential developments for World University and School I wanted to share, and also coming into conversation with Fritz's texts. I think also just what's ahead, World University and School still hasn't gotten the money it needs, the $5,000 to license with the state of California's Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education. So that means that we probably won't be able to matriculate our second undergraduate class at licensing World University and School this autumn 2019. And so postponing it to January of 2020 as we seek these monies to license with the state of California's Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education, and for bachelor and PhD degrees in English. We'll proceed with other degrees in other languages in other ways at a later point. That's another bit of news. Fritz writes in text again, yes, the cyberspace opportunities appear really interesting. And yes, cyberspace opportunities are fascinating in that we're all we're creating them in an ongoing new way. It's been a history of the information technology revolution since the 50s, at least, with chips, silicon wafers, and the opportunity to create in new ways is always there with ones and zeros, with code, with information, with these new digital technologies, with entrepreneurial opportunities. So World University and School seeks to be creative on the knowledge generation side around MIT OpenCourseWare and around Wiki schools conversation in very new ways, building on the innovative opportunities of cyberspace. Fritz writes again, asynchronous threads appear similar to streaming video on demand, don't they? So technology can assist in resynchronization to obtain a global picture, common thread recomposition. Yeah, I think when I think back to Harvard Law professor Charles Nesson's threads in the course I was in as well, this JuryX course, which was in edX, part of HarvardX's offerings at edX. I think that the threads did generate interesting conversations around questions of jury process in the United States. The possibility to respond to your question of resynchronizing them to obtain a global picture is interesting, Fritz. In signing up for this handshake platform, which will allow World University and School to hire interns and from the potentially, I think, the 23 greatest universities in the US that we affiliated with, the emphasis on privacy of student data was first and foremost. So in the resynchronization that you mentioned to obtain a global picture, I think privacy issues would come up very early on in terms of common thread recomposition. So in this course, students shared their ideas. It was in the edX platform. Students shared their ideas in these threads for conversation. It was in this JuryX platform within the edX platform. And I'm asking myself, what questions could one engage these threads data that exist from the 2016 JuryX edX HarvardX course in new ways now in 2019 to explore a resynchronization of a global picture in terms of thread technology. At first glance, I don't think that someone outside the JuryX course or the edX platform would have access to this threads data. And I think that's valuable for student privacy. Whether the professor in this course, Charles Nesson, could access these threads in terms of resynchronizing them to obtain a global picture. It's possible. I think that the course was subtitled for social change. And I think that what we all learned in this course and what the professor may have learned in this course could inform the subsequent development of another JuryX course from HarvardX, or it might inform further iterations on these asynchronous threads technologies. But these are all questions that are unfolding as World University and School seeks to develop a kind of asynchronous threads conversation approach for the benefit of students. And also with the inspiration of Charles Nesson's courses, maybe World University and School will involve itself in a resynchronization of these threads technologies for a global picture. So Fritz writes further, perhaps one could somehow remove the privacy elements. I think edX will have developed their privacy policies pretty fully by now. When you have conversations unfolding in group text, such as these threads, context of what's written can lead to inferences about individuals and their identities. And so I think that that's not an easy process to anonymize, remove the aspects which might jeopardize a student's privacy. All to be considered. I think, as I think about it, it would be World University and School developing or devising further innovations with threads in the platform aspect, which might create a kind of unfolding synchronization to obtain an unfolding global picture, rather than engaging in any specific conversation or what writers of these threads, since the students are all writers in a sense, and therefore thinkers, wrote or said. I think the value of privacy and developing a track record of privacy is important in the digital education space. And I think coding such technologies as anonymous threads or a threads conversation technology that's asynchronous in new ways will take privacy into account. I think conference method will also potentially take privacy into account. So Zoom technologies, Zoom video conferencing technologies, Skype video conferencing technologies, and also in an independent study approach, I think privacy of students is important. I look to Reed College in some ways because I attended Reed College in these regards, and I don't see many expressions of what an individual student said in the first year required Humanities 110 course, making its way into Reed College's magazine or into read college public announcements or social media posts. Occasionally read students are written about in an article for their achievements, whether they got a Rhodes Scholar or a Fulbright scholarship. And I think that's sort of the approach to privacy that World University and School, privacy of students at World University and School will take with regard to our unfolding approach to privacy, given this emphasis in the Handshake platform for hiring students on privacy of students. And Fritz writes further, excellent point, semantic analysis could lead to a highly unique signature. I am learning truly new aspects of privacy issues. Thanks, Scott. Great, yeah. Semantic analysis, which could be a part of the semantic wiki approach to coding technologies, information technologies, I think will, for example, focus on, we'll eventually have to focus on questions of privacy as well, and will be an issue for World University and School as we engage semantic wiki approaches. For example, I think there's a whole remarkably in-depth humanities and social science approach to hermeneutics, or a kind of academic approach to interpretation of texts, which I haven't seen focus too particularly on any given university or any given university's students. But I think that hermeneutics interpretive theory, which is a vast literature, academic literature, would inform some of the developing information technologies that semantic analysis engage. And I think also that this differs country by country. You're from Germany, Fritz, and hermeneutics as maybe a precursor, a predecessor to semantic analysis in Germany is a very different project than in the US, with different approaches to potentially students and privacy questions. So how to develop, with regard to your questions, a resynchronization of these threads conversations, which are asynchronous, to develop, obtain a global picture in a new semantic analytical approaches is interesting for developing further information technologies. I can imagine in Wikipedia too that all the people who have made edits in all the Wikipedia articles, in all the Wikipedia languages, could offer a remarkable sort of basis for semantic analysis that would raise questions about privacy issues as an alternative example to the threads technology for conversation in that is asynchronous in Harvard emeritus law professor Charlie Nesson's 2016 Jury X course, and how this how the unique signature of any Wikipedia author or editor or curator or steward plays out in semantic analysis and semantic wiki technologies are interesting with regard to privacy issues. All great ideas and questions, Fritz. I think that the question of privacy, since I'm bringing that up with regard to an approach to a global picture based on the data that students and end users share in a, say, learning situation, is one that I hope will be addressed also with unfolding law, unfolding legal developments, and in all 200 countries, and in all 7,111 living languages. So World University and School is planning to and seeking to develop online law schools in all 200 countries. And in that process, World University and School further seeks to hire faculty members under one umbrella to teach online law in each of all 200 countries' official languages. And how this plays out in terms of protecting the privacy of students in new ways. In this example of, for example, World University and School students and semantic analysis, new semantic wiki technologies that would look at possibly what students say and then get a global picture of where the internet is in any given developing point in time, is something that perhaps the umbrella of 200 law schools conceptually could address to protect the privacy of students country by country. Privacy is a challenging issue on the web. There is a privacy wiki subject page at World University and School for open teaching and learning in English. And there are some courses on privacy at MIT OpenCourseWare. But lots of security breaches over decades have jeopardized privacy. And now with the advent of quantum computing, where information technologies are much closer than we think at being able to breach security at the quantum level, privacy gets a whole new set of questions and challenges to deal with. How this might play out in the edX platform for Charlie Nesson's 2016 Harvard X Jury X course that is now presently archived, but the data is probably still there. Or to use another example, the Wikipedia communities in about 200 languages who have all made edits. Seems like a great set of data to do semantic analysis on. That could raise questions about the privacy of Wikipedia editors, is all unfolding. So Fritz writes further, so perhaps an avatar could help reformulate the content and put a wonderfully connected graph of information flow with hierarchical functionality that anyone could navigate along. Interesting. I would bring up a third example with regard to avatars and with regard to privacy questions, and perhaps even with regard to quantum computing questions. And that's the example of avatar bot electronic health records, or avatar bot electronic medical records. So say you had, say in 5 or 10 years, telerobotic surgery was developing, and a Stanford medicine surgeon could do a surgery on someone on a ship in the North Pacific Ocean, and that this surgery's data and process in video was recorded into an individual's avatar bot electronic medical record. And the value of privacy for this surgery would potentially be very important, as medical procedures are, and covered by law, US law, and potentially maritime law. How could this data, at the same time, of these avatar bot electronic medical records of a specific surgery or a series of surgeries in avatar bots, think Google Street View with Time Slider, with Pegman, the little avatar in Google Street View growing to become a realistic avatar bot, and potentially even at the cellular and atomic levels. I don't think telerobotic surgery or surgery itself is working at the atomic level yet. That's a long way off, possibly, but I may be wrong. How could this data help with further scientific research and still protect the privacy of the individual who had the surgery? So this is a long-standing question around Creative Commons law and legal systems in many countries, and even with regard to copyright and intellectual privacy and intellectual property. And I'm hoping that as this serious sort of telerobotic surgery avatar bot electronic medical record example could develop within the Google ecosystem conceptually, that privacy questions would be addressed and individuals' privacy protected, and that the data could be used further for science, which I think might, and further research, which I think might relate to your question of how could you develop a connected graph of information flow with hierarchical functionality that anyone could navigate along, so other scientists, other medical students. So I don't know if that addresses some of the examples of, or some of the questions you've been asking, Fritz. Great questions. I'll reinterpret your questions. How to do research ethically on student data, on hypothetically Wikipedians' data, in many languages on, individuals' surgical medical records and still protect their privacy and let the research, the scientific research grow remarkably. And even with machine learning, I come back to a realistic virtual Earth for telerobotic surgery in sort of the Google platform, conceptually. I think Google has a history of protecting privacy, and it also has a history of developing an open approach with science, and it has remarkable machine learning technologies. I suppose, speaking from a kind of US perspective, IBM healthcare initiatives as a huge company with their machine learning and information technology approaches, AI approaches, would handle these questions of individual privacy in very different ways. So healthcare questions at IBM, as they develop with machine learning and seek to kind of get a global picture of a wonderfully connected graph of information flow, say around very serious issues of medical privacy with regard to surgery in any given hospital that IBM might be working with, or any given hospital that, for example, Stanford Medicine, Duke University Medicine, Google, Verily, Project Baseline approach to medicine would be working in are significant. Project Baseline is probably a good reference experience here too. And Fritz writes further, indeed, a really challenging topic for scientific research in ethical terms. Perhaps a confusion matrix analysis could shed light on the underlying privacy issues. I'm not very clear what I've never worked with a confusion matrix analysis, but yes, I think scientists and STEM researchers will be bringing all kinds of analytical approaches to getting a global picture of what we can do when we synthesize data in new ways, and that both privacy and the law about privacy will develop apace, hopefully protecting individuals before they might be harmed by a privacy breach than after. And researchers, I think, surf that wave often. It's not necessarily an easy wave to surf. So I think it's time to bring this to a close. And thanks very much for your thoughts, ideas, questions, and conversation, Fritz. Fritz posts a link to confusion matrix from Wikipedia. If any watchers are interested in what the confusion matrix is, search in Wikipedia on confusion matrix. And with that, check out worlduniversityandschool.org. Questions, thoughts, ideas, email info@worlduniversityandschool.org for then this YouTube, go to youtube.com/WORLDUNIVANDSCH. This video will be recorded there. For Twitter, it's the same as youtube.com, twitter.com/WORLDUNIVANDSCH. And thank you for joining. The next live Hangout on Air will be next Monday, which is July 8th, 2019, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Universal Coordinated Time, GMT, UTC. If you'd like to come into conversation in other ways with World University and School and these Hangouts, please email info@worlduniversityandschool.org. I'm happy to meet online at other times. And thank you so much, Fritz, for joining. Fritz writes, "Thank you, Scott. I learned so much new stuff." I did too. Good questions. See you anon. worlduniversityandschool.org. Check out our new updated webpage. Thanks for all for now, and goodbye.